Hi Hermits, welcome back to my channel. My name is Dara and today I'm going to be talking you through all of the unread memoirs sitting on my TBR. I don't know what it is, but I love buying memoirs. I own so many. I own them on Audible, I own them on my Kindle, and yes, I own them physically. Today we're going to be looking specifically at the physical memoirs that I have not read yet, and hopefully the shame I feel at the end of this video will kick me into gear so I start getting through them with a bit more speed. I think part of the problem is that I love listening to memoirs, especially if the author reads it themselves. And so when I'm in the mood for memoir, I do tend to veer towards an audiobook. But I have a little collection here that I do really want to get to. So like I said, hopefully talking about them will shame me into picking one up soon. In no particular order, the first memoir on my list is In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado. This is something that I've heard so many people rave about, and it's something that I definitely want to read soon, but I do think I'm going to need to be in a very particular mood to read it, because this sort of centers around a relationship that was very toxic, very abusive, and that's not always something that I can easily read about, but I've heard wonderful things about the writing style and I am really looking forward to at some point getting to this one. Then we have Kahlua by Samantha Wood, and it's actually a real rarity for me to buy a memoir by somebody that I am not familiar with, and I had never heard of this author before picking up this book, but I remember finding it at a charity shop and it was £3 for £1, and this was the third book that I picked up to take it up to £1. And this is about a woman who she has Mexican heritage, but she doesn't really feel too connected to that side of herself, but at the same time she feels a little bit shiftless, like she doesn't really have a home, like she doesn't really have anything anchoring her. And so she goes off one day, leaves her life behind to visit her grandmother who lives in Mexico, and really finds herself, her people, her feeling of home in her adventures there. Then we have How to Be a Heroine by Samantha Ellis, and I think we would count this as a memoir, but essentially she is taking us through different heroines from classic novels that have impacted her life, telling us her story, what she learned from them, and all of that stuff. So I think we're going to call this a memoir. Then we have Yes Please by Amy Poehler. This is a really heavy book. Why is this so heavy compared to the others? I don't know. But obviously this is a memoir of famous comedian Amy Poehler. I've read so many memoirs about comedians. They're one of my favorites because it's just a fun time. They're always funny. The way that they write is funny, and sometimes that's just what I need. Sorry if you can hear the squeaking ball in the background. Then we have A Piece of Cake by Cupcake Brown, and this is another one that I feel like I'm going to need to be in the right kind of mood to read, because it essentially follows her story as starting out with a happy family, and then after the death of her parents, being bouncing between different foster homes where she suffered some abuse before falling into a life of addiction and really overcoming everything that had happened to her. And it's quite a chunky one, and I just feel like it's going to be great. I've read so many wonderful things about this book, even though I haven't necessarily heard anyone on BookTube talk about it. I do really want to get to this one soon-ish, but like I said, I need to feel like I'm in a stable mental and emotional state before I read things that are too difficult, especially recently, because I feel like my mental health's been a bit all over the place, but I do still want to read this imminently. Then we have The Yellow on the Broom by Betsy White, and this is a really little one, but Betsy White was born into a traveller family in 1919, and this is her story of those times. So not only is it giving us insight into the traveller community, but it's also got more of a historical slant, because we're looking at her life in the 20s and the 30s and beyond. So I just think this is going to be really fascinating and really unlike anything else that I've read. Then we have My Invented Country by Isabella Allende. Now, Isabella Allende, as you know, is one of my favourite all-time authors. I love her, and this is her memoir. So we're really looking at her life, being born in Peru, being raised in Chile, and as she now moved to the US, because she's had quite a life. I would definitely say that truth is stranger than fiction pretty often in the case of this author, and I'm just dying to dive into this. I know it's going to be beautiful because everything that she writes is so lyrical, so stunning, so whimsical, and I'm excited to see how she treats non-fiction, because as of yet I've only read fiction by this author. Then we have Call the Midwife by Jennifer Worth, and this tells the story of a young midwife in the East End of London in the 1950s. We all know that it's inspired a very popular TV show, a TV show I've never actually watched an episode of, but I do want to at some point. But I definitely want to read the book first. I've heard that it's very difficult in places because obviously it is a true story, and some of the situations in which women would find themselves in the 50s were very, very difficult because liberties were not what they are now. Like the care around pregnancy and birth, not what it is now, and the stigma attached to unwed mothers. I know that I just have a feeling that that is going to play a part, and I just think it is going to be a challenging read, but I also think it's going to be lovely. I've heard people say that it's quite an uplifting time, so I'm optimistic that I won't need to psych myself up too much to dive into this one. And then last but not least, I have my Obama collection. So we have The Audacity of Hope by Barack Obama, we have Dreams from My Father by Barack Obama, and we have Becoming by Michelle Obama. All three of these I've owned for many, many years. This one I bought right when it came out, and I still haven't read it, and there's no reason for me not to. I've heard wonderful things about all three of them. I just need to get my act together and actually start reading. So if you've made it this far, I would love to hear from you in the comments. First of all, if you've read any of the memoirs sitting on my TBR, I would love to hear from you. Where should I start? What do you recommend? And if you haven't, if you have other memoirs that you're like, she needs to read that one, hit me with your recommendations in the comments too. I'm always willing to add more to my wish list, not that I need it. That is all from me today. So I'm going to love you. I'm going to leave you. I'm going to let you get on with the rest of your day, and I will see you in my next upload.